Facebook?
Yep. We'll be
I-
on YouTube
That
and
might
Twitch.
violate my probation.
You're not Rock Canwell. Okay, we're live on YouTube, and Twitch is coming along. Oh, and Twitch, we are
Okay.
live. Okay, everybody, welcome to the Homemade Camera Podcast's first live recording, episode 62. We're trying something new today, which is live streaming. We're live streaming to the Cameradactyl channel. We will eventually live stream to the Homemade Camera Podcast channel on YouTube and figure out where things are going another time when I'm not wasting Nick and Graham's time. Yeah, so we're going to try and record a podcast end-to-end live today. Graham is going to take us through, and then if we have some time at the end, if there's anybody watching and on the line, we're going to do a call-in segment where I'll put a link below for our chat room, and if anybody has homemade camera questions or answers, or they want to show us something they've made, you can call in and chat us. Okay, Graham, take it away.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to start it with our normal little question. So Nick, you do a lot of work with metal. You do some work, I'm guessing, with some wood, but more your media is metal. Ethan, your media is plastic, printed, and then polycarbonate cut and plywood cut. I'm very much a wood and 3D printed plastic person. So I'm going to start with you, Nick. What material would you like to work with that you don't currently work with? Like, if you had the ability to suddenly, work with glass, suddenly work with a material you don't primarily work with now, for the building of cameras. I'm going to put this specifically in the building of cameras. What material would you use? What's your media?
So it isn't a change of material, but a change of tools. So I'm a metal worker by trade, but forging and fabrication of steel is what I've been doing for years. And I am definitely going to make some heavy and insane cameras using those methods. But in terms of builds I want to make, and this is something I may never even get around to, but if I had to embark in a new direction, I would be interested in machining. I would be interested in being able to work aluminum using machine tools.
Are you talking CAD or hand?
I don't care. I just want a machine to make a precise cut for me. However, I can induce it to do that.
Okay.
So that's something I would like to be able to do. And not on a huge scale. I don't need a giant Bridgeport, just small stuff. And I'm already moving towards that by working with things like a router, and aluminum's easy to cut. You don't need crazy machinery to work it, but just setting up. I guess I'll definitely get as far as having a traditional router table with a fence and that sort of thing. But it would be interesting to be able to take it to an even higher level of precision on smaller pieces and parts. I like metal as a material, and I'd like to be able to work it with a more precision. So that's something.
Okay. So, Ethan, what do you think? What's your material that you would like to work with?
Metal, probably. There's a couple, actually. So I've been waiting for the Fuse 1 to come out. I actually have a friend from college who's been working on that at Form Labs, which is a laser-sintered nylon powder device for 3D printing. I think Jeff Perry at 20th Century Cameras worked on a lot of the HP binder jets, which are similar technology, and they make really cool parts. Very precise and stable parts. They have far fewer and less onerous design restrictions than, say, FDM. I'd also like to do more resin. I have a resin printer here and some test resin parts, but I haven't had the month or two of time that's necessary to go into figuring out the material science of resin mixing and what it's good for and whatnot. And then I'd love to spend more time on the mill and lathe making CNC metal parts, but I mean that's very expensive. Not to make one for me, but it's very expensive to sort of go into production with CNC parts, um, which is tough, because there's still a lot of good, inexpensive cameras out there that I would be competing with. So I don't see myself making stuff out of metal or too much metal anytime soon. But yeah, laser sintered plastics, metals, and more resins. How about you, Graham?
I guess it's going to be a trifecta of metal. What I'm good at making the plastic parts, doing the engineering and the design of the plastic parts, but they certainly have a limitation. They have a limitation on their finish. They have a limitation on their durability and flexibility. They're, if you drop a metal camera from eye height, okay, so you're taking a camera and woo, taking a picture and whoops, you drop your M2.
It's done.
Well, it may be done, it may not be done. But if you do the same thing with a plastic camera, you're getting about the same performance. So it's not that. It's being able to make the fine parts. Okay. And it's being able to really do some real fine work that I think you can do in resin, but you cannot do so much in FDM printing. You're limited to a medium fine quality. Like for instance, like I'm holding up an M2 here, and pointing at the dial on that has the shutter speeds on there, and that's all engraved, that's machined. I'd love to be able to do that type of work. I'm feeling a little bit like we've got I feel a little bit like I've got a what do you call it, a chainsaw, and I'm trying to create a fork using a chainsaw, a table fork with a chainsaw.
Analogy.
You can do it, but it's just not going to be the final. It's not of the quality that I'm really, or it's not of the accuracy that I'm really looking for. So.
I haven't had any better luck trying to make a chainsaw using just a fork either. It's difficult, whichever way you run it. That reminds me, it's not just machining that I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a whole range of processes like press forming and bending with a brake, and there's an awful lot you can do with actually quite simple tools. You don't need to machine things out of a solid block of metal. You can build up parts, but just simply being able to make a precise bend in a piece of sheet opens up a whole bunch of stuff, or press forming, which can be done with a manual tool. It's basically similar to an old printing press with a screw and a big flywheel that you just spin the flywheel and it presses down with a tremendous force. And if you put a piece of sheet metal over a little die, it'll instantly make it into this more complex shape. And the dies don't require machining either. That's another thing that traditionally that's the expensive part of that process. But I can make dies by direct forging quite quickly. So there's all sorts of avenues that would open up tons of possibilities without getting into a lot of complexity or even needing a computer or any of that.
Hey Nick, I assume you have like a big press of sorts, either hydraulic or pneumatic.
I used to.
Press.
I used to. I have the parts of it. I took it apart. it wasn't that useful for my work. It turns out a hammer is, a power hammer has orders of magnitude more power than even a big press. So for forging steel, the press didn't really impress me. but for sheet metal, it's a whole other story. And what I need for that is something called a fly press. It's an old-fashioned manual, no electricity needed tool, and that would be a great addition to the shop.
I actually
and if they have a letterpress, also, I'll take the letterpress.
Same idea.
Has nothing to do with cameras.
Maybe more than you would think. But I just watched a bunch of YouTube videos from a maker. I can't remember his name. Maybe I'll find it. Who was making sheet metal stamping dies out of 3D printed plastic. And obviously the power hammer is not going to let those plastic dies live for more than a millisecond. But unlike an arbor press or like a slow hydraulic press, he was able to make some really good parts. At least, 1 or 2 parts before he cracked the die. But it was very interesting and made me think that sheet metal stamping is not something I've traditionally done for anything. If I need metal parts professionally, I just get them CNC machined. But man, it would be nice to have a sheet metal press. It would just take up more than my entire shop.
No, but it doesn't have to be so large. The fly presses are quite small. That's a tabletop tool, or at least a freestanding. They don't have to be huge to be very effective. One of the reasons I kind of got on this track is playing with 1950s and 60s Voigtlander cameras, and at their peak, they were making just superb, beautiful, elegant, complicated things. But when you really look at them, they're made using pretty simple processes. They just were die forming sheet metal, just doing a really nice job, And as far as making dies, the way I make dies is this extremely simple brute force method. I'll make a positive out of steel, which takes me a little bit of time. And then I just take 2 blocks of steel and connect them by a sort of bobby pin shaped spring. I put them in the forge and heat the 2 blocks up to a white heat, stick my blank between them and smack it with a power hammer, and it forms the die in about 10, 20 seconds. So now I have a female die that matches my original positive, and I can forge things to match that original positive quickly. Once that die cools down and you reverse the process, you put a hot piece of metal between the cold die faces and hammer on it. So that's a way that I make hot forging dies, but you could use the same process to make a bottom die for a press. And then you just drop a piece of sheet metal in there and squish it down. And as long as you made a shape that can be formed that way, you can rapidly form more complex shapes. And they don't have to be crazy complicated, but just to make, I don't know, a dome shape, or something like that would suit what your design wants to look like.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What do you guys say we start the Homemade Camera Podcast?
Wait, we didn't start the podcast already?
Well, we're going to start it now. The problem with this week is we don't have any music to roll us in, and we're not going to edit this. We're going to do this straight live. So just pretend that you can hear Robbie's music going right now.
I'm making
I'll have
note
to
add those
to get a recording of it.
Yep.
Oh yeah, add music. Yeah, there we go.
So I was thinking we'd have to play on a harmonica or something, but I guess there is some technology for this.
Yeah, I could probably cue something up relatively quickly, but we took a month off from recording. I was at the end of the semester, which is one of the 2 busy times that I have semi-annually. Nick was at the end of a project, or he's at a busy point in a project. And Ethan, as you guys know, has been working on getting the Kickstarter out and going and prepping for Kickstarter production. And as he points behind him, he's got something like 600,000 3D printers running right behind him. They're all Ender 3s too. it sure looks like to me. But so when we came back, one of the things that we did when we were off for our month was we started talking about different ways of producing the show that would streamline it. And one of the ways is just doing a live show. So one of the advantages of doing a live show is that we will be live streaming, like we are live streaming right now on what outlets? Twitch, Twitch.
Facebook, and YouTube. Currently, just my accounts, but we'll set them up in the intervening week to actually go to the Homemade Camera Podcast accounts.
Okay, yeah. So we're going to be doing that. One of the advantages of that is that we will be able to have some listener/viewer interaction. And I think that that's actually something I'm really excited about. I would love to have somebody come on, and even if it's just in the chat of one of those platforms, we can read questions and hear live feedback and stuff like that, and open it up, make it much less of a one-way stream and much more into a two-way stream. One of the things that we also talked about a little bit is the idea that we are committed to still making this a podcast. I'm somebody for whom watching, having video running is not something that I can do, but I can have audio running quite often in my day. So we're committed to that. So I just wanted to say we're expanding, but we're not forgetting. We're not moving our Western from the radio to the television. We're keeping it on both. So with that said, do you guys want to add anything to that or comment? Tell me how I'm wrong. No?
No, it's going to be a little tricky to do this, but I am hoping we can take advantage of the video to show more stuff other than our talking heads. So to be able to show projects we're working on, drawings, plans, ideas, cameras, even in photographs, whatever images, as an integral part of this, but without leaving a bunch of holes in the audio. So we'll need to work on practicing that. But if anything, this should make us a little more aware of what we're doing. So we hope that adding video won't just make it more complicated, but maybe will make us make the show evolve into something more interesting.
Yeah. Ethan, anything to add before we roll into your section?
Nah, that's good. But let's do your section first, so I can fiddle with OBS a little bit in the background.
Okay. I spent a little bit of time over the last month reducing my camera inventory. And part of the deal was that I wanted to buy something new, and I'm going to go ahead and lift it up, and I did buy something new. This is Chamonix. Here, let me get it on the right side of the boxes. There we go. This is a Chamonix 4x5 view camera. It's got my Topcon Horseman 105 on there right now. But I wanted a view camera that was a field view camera. I wanted a view camera that had more movements than my tower press had, and I wanted something that was a beautiful piece of equipment. This is a really nice wood, and it's got some metal parts to it. Here, let me, if I can, I'll switch to color. I don't see where my, okay. Right now I'm showing black and white, and because my Fuji can show black and white. So anyway, that was one of the things that I did, and I also needed it for a base for a project that I'm working on that I'll probably be talking about in our next episode or the one after. I'm in development on a project. So that was one of the things that I bought. I'm getting further and further into that large format area. One of the things also that I did was I salvaged some parts from the Esquilax. You guys remember the Esquilax was the 4x10 camera. That 4x10 camera was a very good project to do. It was just a dog of an execution. So I am not currently with a 4x10. It was just the most wobbly, unstable behemoth of a dog that there was out there. And but it was okay. So what did I learn? Learned how to make bellows. I learned different ways of mounting the various elements. I learned that I can create light leaks in any format of camera. I'm really good at that. Whether you want them or not. I'm not really great at plugging light leaks. But anyway,
my favorite part of what you learned in that is to draw by hand that whole thing
yes.
and like break it down into all of the mechanisms and like
Yeah.
I like that camera. I didn't have to use it. I'm sure you every day were annoyed by something, but I think that's going to play heavily in the future in all your other cameras.
Yeah. And one of the things about buying the Chamonix is you have to say it like that. You have to say it Chamonix.
Right, with the authentic Chinese accent.
Exactly. I think that is actually a Shenzhen accent, but so
I am curious why it was named after an Alpine French town, because they have views in China also.
Yeah. Otherwise it's the Three Gorges camera. I don't know.
It might be an issue
the
of
Yangtze. I'll bet you there is a Yangtze camera out there already.
Yeah.
They could fool people. It is, by the way, this thing just engineering. It's beautiful. It is everything that a 21st century version of an 19th century of camera should be.
Nice.
You know, it's 21st century machining and materials for a 19th century design. So so that's good. I forgot where I was going directly on that.
Your next project or what you're
working on. Well, I've got a project coming up I'm not going to tell you about.
Right. So you're talking also about you had a project that didn't work as planned, but it has good parts that you can pirate and use on your next experiment. And that's something I do a lot. You'll find that, when something fails, but 3 or 4 things worked right, you can just take those parts and plug them right into your next project.
Yeah. I have a prototype down here that I'm not going to show, so you guys who are at home are not missing anything. But I have a prototype that I engineered, and then I printed and assembled, and it didn't work. There was a film transport issue that did not work. And so I had to go through and redesign it and reimagine what that design was going to be. And that's exactly what I'm doing with the Esquilax. The engineering on the Esquilax will move on, right? So I just needed to get, excuse me, I needed to build the Esquilax so I can move forward with building those types of cameras.
Let me ask you
and
this.
Yeah.
question. I want to go on a little tangent here because I have limited space always, and I know you have limited space. Um, I like to keep a library of prototypes. Right, this is tangential, um, and I never throw out. So if I'm working on something actively, um, I might throw out up to one pass. So I'll have the one I'm working on, and then one version older, and then everything older than that can be scrapped, used for other parts, thrown out, whatever. I would like to have, a 100-foot long table in every iteration of the thing that I'm working on. Like when we went through the Mongoose, I probably had 40% of those prototypes.
Yeah, you want to make the Cameradactyl version of the Nikon museum, right? Or the
Yeah,
Canon.
but it's also like useful to me. Like I keep, sketches in order that I'm working from in CAD or engineering
Mhm.
changes, and like at a certain point, a lot of it has to go. I was like, it hurt my heart when I saw a picture of the Esquilax on top of your garbage can, and I can't believe you threw it out before you made the next version. That seems like I could
Okay.
I could see you making a new one that works better, and then you toss it or give it to somebody. But like you just tossed that thing and moved on. What's up with that?
Okay. So yeah. Okay. So there are a couple of things with that. One of the things is um, I it it was not in a position to immediately build the next one, and I had no place to put it. So it sat on my large format tripod. So if I needed the tripod, I'd go put it on the floor. And then, and I love the look of that camera. I
It was
still,
beautiful.
I love it was yellow and gray. And I love the look of that camera. And it was a nice decorative element for me. For my wife, it was not so much of a nice decorative element. So, and I wanted to, um, I wanted to put the Chamonix on the large format tripod. Nick, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I want you both to look up at your ceilings and now imagine a grid of a few hundred cup hooks.
Yeah.
And one of those old-fashioned grabber reacher things they used to get stuff off high shelves in old-fashioned general stores.
Yeah.
And you could store quite a lot of cameras dangling from the ceiling.
Yeah. I think I would have to be single. If I was single in my bachelor pad, that would work. I do not think that would work with my wife
You
in
know,
the same house.
10 years ago when
And
I was buying cameras, I was in Denver. I forget the guy's name, but I bought a lot of cameras from him. He had a big, like a drive-in photograph a car type of studio, and we went into his basement, and it must have had like 7-foot ceilings, and it had just hooks everywhere, and he was pulling cameras and lighting and props off of the ceiling and handing them to me in boxes. It was ridiculous.
I like it. I think it's,
yeah, and there's something to that. The problem that I have is for air conditioned space, which is absolutely imperative in Florida, where mold, mildew, um, and other types of critters will completely kill your system in
sure.
a matter of a week or two, or well, okay, in the matter of a month, it can grow mold to the point where it's unusable. Um,
So you're going to need to
I just don't have the space to do it.
So I understand you're moving into cameras that are so beautiful that you could plop them anywhere and nobody will, want them kicked out of your house. So from now
That
on,
and the
attractive
Esquilax
cameras. Yeah.
wasn't quite there, and the Esquilax was always a prototype. It was from day one to be a prototype. It was for me to figure out if I could build what I wanted to build.
So
And
I'm going to
and
ask you a
I
direct
got halfway
question
there.
about it.
Yeah.
So what's the primary problem? The primary problem I have with those big view type cameras when they're homemade, the primary problem I have is precision. that if you can't keep that lens and film plane perfectly parallel to each other when you want them to be there, it introduces all these issues, especially with long lenses and shallow depths of field. You're going to get, half the image is going to be blurry, or, it's just that fussing to get things square is the biggest thing, I find anyway. It, especially with longer lenses and, stop the problems with depth of field that come up.
And I'm going to say, when I was looking at buying the Chamonix, I looked at Steve Lloyd's Carbon Adventurer, and I really like his method of having the 0 points. The magnetic 0 points are really good, and that's something that I may build into a future design. On the Chamonix, it is they're not magnetic, it's visual. There are little pips at that, and what I mean by a pip, it's a little mark, and that little mark is it says where you're parallel, and there's one on every one of the adjustments that shows when you're at 0. Now, one of the things that I'm going to say is your lens board, like the one for the lens board, the rise and fall. Let's say that for the rise and fall, there are a lot of, and these are Linhof Technica lens boards, Linhof boards, whatever. They often will have an offset hole. And so it's not necessarily going to sit exactly in the right spot with those marks, but that's a good way. And I did do some of that. The problem was that I did not have materials that were rigid enough to assure that when it was straight up and down, it was actually straight up and down.
Materials and connections. And that precision is super important. And I have an example of that I just went through with the graphic press cameras. So the traditional graphic press cameras, all the way up through the pacemaker, which was top of the line standard camera, they have a self-aligning front standard. In the way the clamp works, it's symmetrical and it always aligns. And because all it offers is just rise and a little bit of tilt, those can be very prescribed just by the structure. So the way that camera works, you can yank the lens out on the bellows to any place, lock it, and then switch to focusing, and it will always be square. So then they came out with the Super Press, the Super Graphic, which I also have, and that has full movements, and it introduces a problem. When you pull the lens out to a random position on the focusing rail and lock it, it's not necessarily square. And the only way you can get it square is with these little stops that can be moved and screwed into place. And they have a quick release fold over stop so that you can slide past them, or you can use them to lock the camera or the front standard square. So the secret of that camera, if you want to use multiple lenses, is you need to accumulate extra stops and add them into the focusing rail so that you've got a stop place for infinity focus on each of your primary lenses. And that is a great solution, but it is a little tricky to find them. You've got to basically steal them off other cameras. So
you can find them on eBay. They go for quite a bit of money, but you can find them on eBay. But the what I did, Ethan, what is it? Tower Press is also a Bush Pressman. So what I did for those was, like, I found infinity focus for each of my lenses, and then just took a stylus and marked up the aluminum in those locations and made sure it was square. So I could bring it out to that right location, and it was relatively quick to do. I just had to remember which mark was which. And then I can also, it has a focusing scale on it on the rack and pinion, and that worked pretty good.
Yeah. So the issue with this, sorry, but the issue with the Super
Yeah.
Graphic is that it has too many movements, and so
Yeah.
and that one adjustment does more than one thing. So you can't. It's just too fiddly to rely on marks. So you need the
Okay.
physical stops with that camera in order
Yeah.
to keep from going insane, because you're adjusting several different parameters with just one toggle.
Right.
So the stops are crucial. But the other good news is that the stops come with all the other cameras, and you don't really need them for the other cameras because they're self-aligning. They're really only there if you're calibrating a rangefinder to a certain position on the focus
Mhm.
rail. So you can take them off your Crown Graphic or your other older speed graphics or whatever, and put them all onto the Super Graphic. So if you're
Mhm.
somebody like me who is focused on one brand of cameras and has several different ones, you can, and also those fit the different sizes. You can take the same one off a Century Graphic will fit on a big Crown Graphic. So you
Mhm.
can basically pilfer them from other cameras and stick them on your Super Graphic. And that camera, I just want to say, is really growing on me. It's a
Uh-huh.
really, really nice piece of machinery. It's entirely made of metal. It's very precise. It offers more movements than I want. And the only disadvantage of it is, we'll get to later, is that its widest lens that it can focus is 90 millimeters. And
Yeah.
that's a limitation that bothers me.
Okay. The other thing that I wanted to talk about today was I put some of the money that I sold a lot of cameras and a lot of pretty high end assets that I had, and I put some, I bought the Chamonix, and I also bought a point and shoot camera that I'm really excited about. It's a Fuji Cardia Rencia. And you probably, if you are one of those people who looks at eBay, you've seen it. It is the 8 lensed um, camera that's made by Fuji, and they advertise it for golf, to analyze your golf swing. um, and I, I love this camera because it is so golf centric. It I think it's cheap because it just talks about that one thing. So what it is it's 8 lenses, and they're full height, but I think they're half frame, or they could be a little bit even smaller than half frame. But what it does is it takes 8 pictures in sequence. And so you can set it for a certain delay, from what I can tell. I haven't read the manual yet.
This sounds a
But
lot to me like a pocketable version of Muybridge's horse camera that invented
yes,
the motion picture.
absolutely. Absolutely. But I don't think I'm going to have to kill my wife's lover in order to shoot it. Um, so anyway, so the idea is that you get a sequence, and you can set the delay so it's click, 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 or it's click, 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 or you can set it so you take each frame individually. And part of the deal was, oh, and I've also ordered another camera that's going to be a month coming from Russia, that I'm going to tell you about. Part of it is
cameras in, cameras out.
Cameras in, cameras out. Right, exactly. But the thing that you can do with this is you can make an 8 frame GIF, or you can,
But I just want to point out that it's on 35 millimeter film.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Right. It's on 35 millimeter film, and you can do an 8-page GIF, or an 8-frame GIF, which is something you can do with a digital camera in with like click, 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 click. And you can do that with a full frame camera as well. It's just that this is dedicated to that, and it's got some controls that really help that. You can trigger them right to left or left to right. That's
that's cool. That makes sense. Now I understand why there's 8 lenses. I couldn't figure out why you needed 8 lenses instead of just having a fast film advance. But that ability to change direction is special.
Yeah. So there is that. So I'm really excited about that coming. And it's coming from Japan on the slow boat. So I don't know if it's going to have to get vaccinated at the border.
Nah.
But it'll be sometime in January before I get that. The other thing that I ordered, and it's a camera that I have been wanting really maybe for about 7 or 8 years, and it's a Lomo Sputnik. So a Lomo Sputnik is it's a TLR, as in a 3-lensed a tri-lens reflex. It's a stereo camera that shoots on 120 film and has a third eye that is the viewing. And I've been doing a lot of stereo work, and I love stereo work. Now, one of the things that I'm going to say, what I do with stereo work is, and I've talked about it before, and that is usually I hold my camera vertically and I have a movement. I have a sway. I do a click and then a click. And I can get some pretty good stereo work, and I've been doing that for 7 or 8 years. So I can do that, but this will give me a single time frame. The problem with the 2 clicks is if anything's moving, you get this weird, like, it's almost like a flashing light when you look at a stereo image. It doesn't flash, but it calls your attention to it in a way that would not be called attention to if it was a single momentary release. Now,
all right, Graham,
we're going to hear about this a little bit more in Ethan's section, but what were you going to say?
I wanted to ask, like, okay, we're not the Classic Lenses podcast here, just buying and selling cameras. Ostensibly, we build cameras. How have these cameras either inspired you to build cameras based upon them, using some of the things? I think we spent a lot of time talking about detents on 4x5 field cameras. You said you like the magnetic detents rather than like ball bearing, spring, click detents, or even just things. Are there specific cameras that you're thinking about building? I know you have a top secret project that goes to one of these cameras. I hope that's not being too specific.
No. Well, okay. So the Chamonix, I am going to build a 4x5. I am going to build a homemade 4x5. And I plan at this point, if I can build it to the quality that I want it to be, I'm going to release the patterns and the how-to. That's my plan. So that's that. The Fuji, the 8-lensed Fuji, my God, isn't that Hervé? That's the commercial version of Hervé Elena's 8 or 16.
I prefer Hervé's camera to the Rencha, but yes.
Absolutely. But I want to do that same thing with a pinhole. So the more that I can learn from this, the better off I am.
Interesting. So is that for I mean, I would think that it's better as sort of a stereo type of camera, or to be used as a stereo camera rather than an action cam with pinholes, or what are you thinking of using it for?
No, I'm thinking about using it very much the way Hervé does his.
I see.
You just need slower action. You just need slower moving action.
Yeah, just slower moving action. So I've got to figure out 1 1000, 2 1000, 3 1000, 4 1000, 5 1000, 6 1000, and just trigger them in sequence. But I kind of want to. I want. Okay, so there are a couple of things. Not everything that I do photographically has to do with building my own version. Some of it does and some of it doesn't. I mean, I'm holding up my M2 again. My M2 has absolutely no place from a point of view of a homemade camera because I ain't building an M2, right? So not everything has to run into that. I am very interested in the artistic output of every one of these cameras that I have. I want to build a really good pinhole camera, or excuse me, sorry, a really good stereo camera, whether it is pinhole or whether it is lensed, or what the deal is. Now, one of the other things that I've been working on, of course, you guys have seen, those of you who follow me on Instagram, is building your own lenses. So I've got projects coming out my ears right now, which is really good because a month ago I had no projects. It's taken me a month to get into back into the idea of building, and I needed to step back, and that's what this month has given me. So there, just because one of the things I was looking at before I got the Sputnik was the idea of just getting two identical point and shoot cameras that I would mount a certain distance apart from each other, vertically, and then I would just press the buttons at the same time or get a remote, because a lot of those had remote possibilities. So that was another way of doing stereo, and I still may do that. I actually did that back before I got back into film. So we're talking 2012. I was walking around with two point and shoot digital Canon cameras that I would walk around, that I had mounted on a board, and I would walk around and go click.
I was
at
doing
the same
thing.
Yeah.
One of these days we should do an episode. Do you still have that rig?
No.
I have.
But I mean, I could build that rig. I could
Yeah.
build that rig in a half an hour.
Yeah. I've got the same setup. I've got a split cable release, a double cable release, and a rail that goes on a tripod that you can mount two cameras on and adjust the distance between them. So and the
all
angle.
you have to do is take one Chamonix and mount it to the bottom of another Chamonix, and get one of those double plungers, and you've got
right.
Yeah.
And make a headgear so you can wear it on your head.
Oh, no, that's you, Nick. I'm not you. That is yours. Okay, so I'm done. We're done with my section. And just imagine music playing. Imagine that wonderful ding. Okay. Okay, Ethan, what have you been up to?
So I've had a very busy month. I am here in the shop running currently 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 of the 21 printers that are in the farm are running off Mongoose parts. I don't know if you can see it, but over there I have about 400 pounds of Mongoose parts. It's been Chinese Hanukkah every day. Yesterday I got 140
Are those British
knobs.
pound sterlings?
No, they are. It's like maybe 200 kilos of parts, right? And so I've been building the farm. I built 6 new printers. I moved the racks around, and I've just been trying to build all of the physical parts and get those ready before all of the electronics are here, right? So there's a lot of components, resistors and capacitors and switches and things that are coming from China. I actually think I'm going to be maybe a week or two late on the first batch, because I will have, by the time everything gets here, I will have 140 mongooses ready to go, but for a couple of components that I can't buy in the U.S. I actually just yesterday got a set of JST 2-pin connectors that were not the XH 2.54 millimeter pitch. Yeah, Nick's going to sleep. But yeah, so
God, don't you hate that when that happens?
Right, they were too small to carry the current that I needed them to. Anyway, I'll pay extra by like $2 and get those from Amazon. But slow boat from China. Some things come really quick, some don't. I have 45 pounds of custom circuit boards that came in like 5 days. But I've been working really hard on that, trying to get that out. I'm also working on this order of Polaroid scan trays for Brooklyn Film Camera. These are just halves. I need to bond the other side of the acrylic and cut those. That was supposed to go out this morning. However, I spent about a week trying to move a 1,200-pound laser cutter into my shop and decrate it with a pickle fork and a sledgehammer carefully because there's a $1,200 tube inside. And then get it running, rewired the blower motor. So the machine has been converted to run on 110 from the Chinese 240, but still has Chinese plugs on it, outgoing for all of the accessory machines. The fan will run on 110, also has a Chinese plug. Had to run the fan through the laser cutter, blew a fuse, took every machine out for about half an hour before I found the fuse, replaced the fuse, rewired the blower fan so I could plug it into regular wall power. None of this is super exciting or camera related other than I've been working on tools to build cameras. Yes.
Didn't they have a North American model?
This was the North American model. I mean, they're all made in China, right? I bought it from an American company that dealt with ports and duties and rewiring some of the power supply issues. But, nobody gets a perfect machine, right? And that's sort of the nature of these things. So it took me about 3 days to get it into the shop, get it all assembled, get the chiller, the blower, the air assist running, download some new laser cutter software, learn how to use that.
You could have gotten a Glowforge, man. Those are cool. They look sleek.
A Glowforge is almost the same price and cuts like this big. My machine will now cut 3 by 4 feet with a pass-through up to 4 by infinity feet. So it's way nicer than a Glowforge.
It's going to be worth it.
I think so. It already is. So let me think, is there anything else before we get to the laser cutter? So I think I finally got it dialed in. I adjusted all of the optics bench mirrors in it so that the beam is collimated and aligned. I leveled the table so I can make large cuts. And I kind of took a day with my friend Joe to just to play with the laser before I ruined another $100 worth of acrylic for that Brooklyn Film Camera thing. I figured I'd try it on a bunch of different things, get it going before, I whatever. So anyway, I made let's see, this box camera in just a day with my friend Joe. It takes 4x5 sheet film holders and actually this rubber band method. I was thinking about making elastic bands, but the rubber bands are really simple and strong.
So Ethan is holding up a laser cut plywood 4x5 pinhole camera that the rubber bands hold a standard fidelity film holder on the back. It has kind of a floppy paddle shutter that also has a rubber band attached to it. And yeah, there we go. Does it have neodymium magnets anywhere on there?
So this one does not have magnets. So the idea
is
that's
so 20th century. You need 21st century technology.
I have neodymium magnets in a lot of things. I was laser cutting some rubber stamps where they magnet to the stamp holder. There's some magnets in the next super secret product that is somewhere in that pile over there. But I wanted to make this, one, to test out the cutter and get it sort of dialed in for cutting wood, but also if I have to assemble this, it takes hours. It'd be very expensive. But I should have put it on the internet a while ago, but I've been working on some upgrades to it. But I'm going to make it as like a self-assembly kit where you don't even need clamps. You basically need glue and paint, and maybe some wood stain if you want to be fancy, and sandpaper. And because of the box joints, it goes together square, just pops together like Legos, and then you just put some rubber bands around it like this while the glue is dry. I did this on a live stream. Probably a bunch of these people have seen this, but it just, it took me 2 hours to build it really hastily. And if you let the glue dry for a day and let the paint dry for a few hours, I think you could do a much nicer job. But I think this will be a product when I have a little bit of bandwidth to actually photograph it. There's 400 pounds of mongoose parts in my tabletop studio. So, yes, Graham.
Yeah. Okay. So we have right now at least 3 people viewing this. And if there are other people on YouTube, there are 11 people on YouTube chat. So here's the question. I want to see a variant of this, and I want to know how many other of the people who are watching along. I want the variant. No, not the 8x10. He pulled out an 8x10 variant. I want a stereo 4x5
Cool.
version. It shoots on a single sheet. It's got a double paddle. And here's an example of the double paddle. I'm holding an Apple Pencil right in the center, and it rotates to expose both windows, both pinholes at the same time. And all you need to do is just put a piece of wood right down the center on the inside. So, let me. Well, that's your.
This is something else, but this sort of
that's a mechanical one. So the question is to the people who are watching along on YouTube, because I only have that chat up. Who also is interested in a stereo 4x5 version of this? So I'll watch that chat and I'll see if anybody else is interested.
Of our 3 viewers.
Absolutely. My camera's running out of battery. I got to switch that, so I'm going to mute for a moment. You can continue on.
Okay. So, what else have I been working on? I've been working on a bunch of like really silly shutter designs that are way too overbuilt and Rube Goldbergian for these pinholes, right? I was talking to Andrew Bartram while I was building it, and he said, just use your finger; it will work great. And so, yeah, I mean, these are fun. My friend Han designed some. He had some drawings where every time you took a picture, it fired a rubber band off like a rubber band gun. I like that. And then, what else have I been working on? Pretty soon I'm going to have to stop design time entirely and spend about 20 days sanding and soldering. I'm close to the sanding point. I don't have enough components to solder, but, just other kind of design some stamps that are magnetic to be laser cut, just more or less to stamp my packaging. This one was fun. I designed, it's kind of a laser cut box brownie. Here, let's align this in the screen. Sorry.
So what are you using for a lens?
This was like either pinhole or sort of, maybe some surplus shed or AliExpress. Like, this is a very cheap build-it-yourself camera that actually would have a shutter mechanism. My screen is reversed. Shutter mechanism between these plates. And then I kind of started drawing different views of it, and I catted most of this up. But kind of the interesting part that I was working on, like, okay, so I have, here's, oh my God, I need to unmirror the screen.
Yeah, I've been doing that.
Here we go. Nope, wrong. Yep. Okay. So this What am I doing? Okay, there we go.
I
This
have
is
a
sort of like a
suggestion.
locking mechanism.
Why don't you aim a camera at a mirror and then you can hold the thing in front of the mirror?
I just need to fiddle with the settings, but we're live.
Okay,
Then-
so what Ethan's doing right now that is probably not tailor-made for the podcast version of this is he's showing sketches in his dream camera journal. So yeah. So I want to say Dale Willits says 4x5 stereo sounds cool, but imagine the size of the Viewmaster type spectacle viewer you would need to wear. So just it would
Right.
it would be kind of like who had the big glasses who would say I see blah 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 out there, did the cartoons. Okay, never mind. Romper Room, she had big. Okay, never mind. But
so what his point is good though. If the stereo optic and viewer is really huge, you might actually need to have a counterbalance and a shoulder yoke to hold the thing up.
Yeah, or you do it with a table mounted and you just flip them and you flip them. Or
Right.
if you're somebody like me, these could be contact print level and you just look at them. So
and Heather Oklaus would make a big like a dollhouse that you would peer into and
absolutely,
take care of it
absolutely, or something way cooler than we could think of.
I mean, so Laura bought me years ago as a present from eBay one of these old like stereo viewers, right? And it has the goggles that you put on and you hold the stick, and it has like a card holder.
Stereo
that's
optic.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay. So
yeah.
Yeah. That word.
I want to before we lose track, Ethan. I really like the Box Brownie kit.
Thanks.
And I think it would be super cool to play with. Actually, if you have a very, the classic camera with the very simple one-speed hand-holdable shutter, which you can find in a lot of those old cameras. But what really interests me is why not be able to pick some common but fairly high-quality lens that you could just stick on there, but still use it in as simple and old-fashioned a way as the box cameras. That could be really enjoyable to use.
Yeah, so I kind of designed that thing as a exercise in just showing some friends CAD online and playing with the laser cutter. And in that, I don't think that's going to be a major product of mine, but it'll be a product as a kit eventually. I think they're going to be fun to use, but really fun to build for those people. Ooh, Graham, what are you showing me?
Okay, so I'm holding up. By the way, Folklorio said the stereo camera would be great. Okay, so that's
hold on. Somehow.
Okay. Oh, you've lost Nick,
your window.
or you've lost me. There we go.
Yeah, sure.
So what I was holding up while Ethan tries to get me back on the screen is it is a positive meniscus lens that I bought from Surplus Shed. It's huge. It's 42 millimeter diameter versus the 7 millimeter diameter that you see in those what do you call it in the real brownies. But I got this from Surplus Shed. It's got 105 millimeter focal length, which is it is ideal for your 4x5 or for your 120
6x9. Yeah.
Well,
it's slightly tele.
It's got to be slightly telephoto because I took the Brownie and I folded the film holders. Let's see. I have the sketch
Actually,
here.
on 6x9, 105 millimeters is a slightly wide normal. It's not telephoto.
Yeah. So it's what I'm saying is it's within the range. It's within the range of what. And I'm just looking for the receipt to tell you guys how much that positive meniscus lens was. It was that might have been a $15 lens. Yeah, I don't have the receipt on that one.
So the issue with the lens is you just need a shutter, and so I've been working on like a bunch of Rube Goldbergerian shutters. Mm-hmm. This one is kind of based on a movie camera and a shutter that my friend Joe made, and then I'm kind of like on this kick right now, which is adjustable speed dual slat shutter that has 4 springs and 5 or 6 pivots. It's actually not going to be that complicated or large, but it's
Mhm.
kind of funny to look at, and I would like to expose that on the front of the camera, maybe under some clear acrylic, but like make it a kit that people can not only just build a box, but like actually build some mechanisms that give you 2 or
Mhm.
3 shutter speeds. And I think at that point you could mount a lens in or on it, or come up with versions. I really can't devote a ton of time to making that right now. I just really want to get these Kickstarter and the Brooklyn Film Camera orders out the door, but it's simmering. I have half of a CAD model of this thing that I did in my spare time the other day.
And Dale says you can make a peep show viewer for the 4x5, like the old timey slideshows. So it would go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back. Kind of like a wiggle gif.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, those are all possible. I love the idea of the make your own shutter concept. And Ethan, I think that you could probably sell, 1,000 of those to some educational, old timey, all the toys are wood store.
Yeah, maybe. Eric Matthew says making a large format shutter for old brass lenses would be a killer money maker. That is something that I am working
Yeah.
on, but not. I don't want to make a Rube Goldberg contraption for old brass lenses. I think I'm working on like a much more complex shutter, but that's not a like 1 week
Yeah.
project. That's a long-term thing that got shelved a long time ago, waiting for this laser.
Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, well, somebody out there should make an old-fashioned guillotine. That's a pretty straightforward
Well,
process.
Eric works on those. He's got some rubber band powered ones, and he's got gravity powered ones. So
no, but I mean a kit. So I think the self-assembly
like a
kit thing is a really good idea. That idea that you could make some parts and then people will spend their own time assembling them. And I'm really drawn to these plywood ones because you don't need a printer. You just need rubber bands and glue. Anyone can do that.
Right. And if you buy it as a flat pack, that's the deal.
So I want to point out I have this Restream.io that like agglomerates all of the chats from the different platforms you guys might not be seeing, but there is some Eric Mathy and Canal Folklorico discussion about sketches of shutters and such, and maybe we can have some of those guys on in our next segment to talk about what we should and shouldn't do.
Next episode, right? Next episode,
or just in our call-in segment.
Yeah, right.
But first,
so yeah,
I just gave you the update on me.
Yeah.
What is Nick up to?
Oh wait, hold on. Music. Nick,
Pew, pew.
go.
So I'm finally getting to the end of a big construction project I spent most of the last year on, and so I'm starting to have more time a little bit. And
is that Space Needle 2?
No,
because I've been seeing that pictures of that going up. No,
that's not me. So,
Okay.
But what I've been trying to fit in when I get a little time and sunshine is basically just testing some of the cameras with shutters that I've been tinkering with. And the primary two I've been working on are the Speed Baby and a 3x4 speed graphic that I've showed already on this several times. But what I finally was able to do with that 3x4 speed graphic is I have a 20th century camera back on it that centers the lens on the film, on roll film holders. And that's important because a lot of the lenses I was playing with were system lenses, which have fairly small image circles. And in order to, at least get a shot without vignetting, you need to get them lined up right. Well, I solved that problem, but I found that the Kiev 88 lenses I've been using, they work on the camera, but the front standard is so far back that it's inside the box, which makes it impossible to add movement. So the whole point of having a bellows version of that camera isn't really working out for the shorter system lenses, because it's just, it works, but it's not adding any features. And the Speed Baby works better because that's just a bayonet mount. You have perfectly precise alignment. You snap the lens on and go. So that's come out as the winner for system lenses, and I'm going to expand on that idea. The other thing I've been doing is kind of finishing off, sort of completing the press camera collection I've been playing with, and I'm finding that that style of camera is my favorite. I still think that home built ones can be a big improvement on the traditional ones, but playing with the traditional ones is a really fast way to understand what works and what doesn't, and use as a test for different ideas. So I recently came up with a 4x5 speed graphic by buying one that was missing major parts for really cheap, because those are getting really expensive. That's a side topic, but I feel like COVID has brought yet another big price increase in old cameras and analog gear, which is counterintuitive since so many people are out of work and should be saving their money. But for whatever reason, more and more people are playing with analog stuff, and the
Retail
prices seem to be
therapy.
rising. Yeah,
And also
prices are
people
going up.
probably not going around buying cameras in the way that we used to.
So whatever, for whatever reason, the darn things are getting too expensive. Probably we're contributing to that. But buying this one with missing parts worked out, because I've been collecting broken ones for a while, and I had all the parts I needed to make that one. With a screwdriver, I was able to make that cheap broken one into a perfectly working camera. The shutter speeds on it, it's a pacemaker, so probably from the 60s or 50s. The shutter speeds are all accurate. It works great. It's just a great camera. The other problem was that the ground glass I had for it had broken. And so I got a piece of just a plain sheet of ground glass that fit precisely into it. But that raises another problem, because those cameras have the graphic press cameras have a, what's that lens called that's concentric circles? A Fresnel. They have a Fresnel lens that goes in between the ground glass and the film and the lens side, which means that if you take it out, the ground glass is now too close to the lens, and it's not going to match what a film holder sees. And so I spent a bunch of time with little strips of tape and a micrometer until I was able to space that ground glass back to the right distance without putting this dirty, grubby old nasty piece of Fresnel plastic back into the system. And I kind of like plain ground glass. I like the way it looks. I don't need the even illumination out to the corners that the Fresnel gives. So just a heads up, if you're fixing ground glass in an old graphic camera, don't just put ground glass straight into it, but spend some time spacing it. And it's approaching 2 millimeters farther back if you don't have the Fresnel lens in there.
Can't you just throw calipers on the Fresnel lens?
No, you can't. That's a bit of a problem. The reason you can't is because the diffraction index of the plastic is different than air.
Ah.
So you can't just match it. You actually have to move it a measured distance, which I found by looking up discussions on the internet, and somebody who really knew what they were talking about had an actual 1 point whatever millimeter distance that you need to offset it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a bit tricky.
All right.
That's my main thing. I had one more thing.
Yeah.
Someday, about 100 years from now, when
Nick is holding up his homunculus.
yeah, I have a homunculus, and in about 1,000 years, when Ethan's done with all of his mongoose and other projects, I'm going to encourage him or somebody to make an elongated viewfinder. This is one I happen to have. And on any camera which puts a big, fat, chubby RB67 film holder on the back, it puts the typical viewfinder in a cold far away, and it's awkward to see through it. Well, this is an elongated one, which brings an eye cup all the way to the back of the film holder, and it makes it much easier to see what you're doing. This particular one is perfect for a 100 millimeter lens, which is the standard normal lens for Mamiya Press system,
Mhm.
and works really well. Pretty accurate. I like it, and the eye cup's nice too. It's
Yeah.
comfortable to
Okay.
use.
So what Nick was holding up, think of like a chimney finder kind of thing, but it's not looking down; it's looking back from the body, and all it does is offset that viewfinder far enough that you're not looking sideways out your head to
Yeah, it's just longer. It's just an
yeah.
elongated pyramidal, peep
Uh-huh.
through viewfinder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It,
the way I've used that in the past is like I don't have an elongated viewfinder on the homunculus, but I know how far my nose has to be. You know how hard it has to press against the camera to put my eye at the right distance. But like, I think a lot of people actually have a lot of trouble figuring out like how close or far they need to be from one of these finders, and that elongating the viewfinder might help a bunch of people out. Yeah, I think that's a
it
good
does
idea.
make it, yeah, it makes it much easier because the fine tuning of where your eye is much less significant with the longer distance. It's similar to the old, folding sports finders that would mount on a camera, and I actually picked a couple of those up to experiment with them. I like them a lot too. So you have like a little eye loop, and then way up in the front, much farther away, a wireframe that can pop up. And the nice thing about those is you can have alternative wireframes for different formats and different lens focal lengths and so forth. And you can just fold up the one you need and use it. They're a good idea. And the best one I found so far is actually a Mamiya Press one.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I was thinking of
except they don't fit in standard cold shoe, but
maybe
yeah.
designing something now that I have the cutter and a lot of scrap thin black acrylic to make a sort of Mercury style longer one, which is as wide as the widest lens you might put on a Bronco pan, so or a Mamiya Press, whatever, 50 millimeters, and then just drop in acrylic front masks, right? Because none of them
Yep.
have optics. That's possible.
Yeah. And the nice thing about that is you basically are creating the equivalent of a rangefinder or viewfinder, where you have that a big field of view and then a small square showing where the actual frame is. And you can if you make a tilting version of that, you can actually very effectively deal with parallax as well, just by sliding a little scale onto the rough distance you're looking at. That's a pretty cool, simple, and it's nice because you can just fold it up and put it in your pocket if you don't need it. It's good.
All right. And that's what you had for us today, Nick.
That's enough.
ready
Yeah.
to- Okay. So we have a brand new section of our show. It's called Questions from the Live Stream. And so Ethan, you have all of the live streams. I only have the YouTube. And he's just put up on the screen, come join our chat. And he's thrown it in each one of the chats. So one of the things that has already been said. So I'll start this off. And this is Folk Lorico on YouTube, and that is and of course I'm going to talk about Ethan, and Ethan has just taken his headphones off and exited the room. So let's just Nick, we'll just say this is a really good idea. Ethan should upload a sketch of the day, and so that everybody can see some of his sketches. And then he does follow that up with, although Ethan does have competitors who might steal his good ideas. But I think that that's good. So let's have that happen. I don't know if Ethan had to go and vomit or something, and now something's come up on my screen about admitting somebody. I feel like we're on one of those overloaded ferries in like Indonesia, and the and the captain has just passed out drunk on. We are. I mean, it's one way to say it, we're rudderless, but I think that this is a little bit more of mal whatever. So nobody has been admitted yet because Ethan is gone and he's the admitter. So
okay, so yeah. I have a couple things I could add. That was so in my earlier I mentioned that some of the press cameras are a problem because I like wide lenses. I found that I'm doing a lot of photographing in the forest, and I found that wide lenses are a really big help with that, both because of depth of field, but also because of the way they kind of spread things out. And when you have a really complex environment, sometimes visually spreading things out makes a better composition, less cluttered, and more emphasis on whatever you're trying to single out. So the trick there for me is wanting to use medium format film on these old cameras that don't allow a wide enough lens. So that's really where I'm focusing my next home build, is in order to get lenses really close to a roll film holder in order to use wider.
Yeah,
welcome, Eric.
Hey, something to that.
Also, that was really disconcerting to hear Nick speaking in two completely different out of sync times. I had Nick in both ears, 30 seconds, and I'm not sure which one was 30 seconds ahead or 30 seconds behind. I was just like,
joining us now from the the LFPP. We have Eric Mathey.
I'm just a hangers-on, really.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Eric, welcome to the show. We've talked about getting you on the show, but then you actually joined the LFPP, and then we thought, nah.
They're just another spin-off of the Homemade Camera Podcast now, and so's the Classic Lenses Podcast. Everyone's out there making their own stuff now.
Yeah,
it's just the trend.
All I know, since I'm a very late comer to this entire scene, is that it does seem to be a bit incestuous. Like y'all seem to know each other and just generally harass the crap out of each other on a consistent basis with affection.
It's a community, you know. So
incestuous sounds so much better.
Yeah. Okay.
Sounds saucy.
Depends on your family, but yeah.
Fair. I'm just gonna.
Oh, that is so wrong. That is wrong on so many levels. Okay. So Eric, what have you been up to? What's your contribution? What have you been doing in the last 2 days? Besides moving?
Besides moving, yeah. Besides finding my dishes. Finally, we have dishes after like 3 weeks of where the is the box of our dishes. We found the damn dishes. Well, I have a call with Alana and Wayne Belger tonight to go over the 8x10 project that they're doing. I don't know if you've heard much about that thing yet, but
hey, Eric, do you know that I have been trying to get Eric or Wayne on this show, or actually just talk to him for about 6 months now?
Wayne is awesome, but he will readily admit he is not. How did he put it to me once? He is not like digitally enabled, like emails, communications, that sort of stuff. Like you've got like a less than a 10% chance of actually having one of those.
Well, I've tried 6 times now. Maybe I need to try another.
You need 4 more. Or
mail. Does he have a mailbox?
Yes. I have his address, but I also I'll talk to him tonight. I have a phone call with him tonight.
Cool. You should tell him to email me back or respond to my Facebook messages or Instagram messages. I really want to talk to him.
Okay.
What is your mailing address?
Yeah.
We might have to show up at his door.
His studio's awesome. Make no mistake. Like his where he lives and works has a darkroom and a CNC, like full CNC machine shop setup, is bonkers awesome. Like, it is a really cool space. If you're ever in Tucson, for sure, and like after he's on your podcast, I'm sure you'll be very friendly with him. Just ping him. You're like, yeah, man, come on over. Post COVID, of course.
Nick
Anyways,
and I are both in Tucson fairly frequently.
Yeah, my wife has a place there, and we usually spend time every winter. This is going to be the exception, but
okay. I love Tucson. Tucson's awesome.
Yeah, me too.
So the project. So his partner Alana is, I don't know if you've ever seen her work, is a really fantastic portrait photographer. Like, her portraits are stunning. I can't recommend her work enough. But at some point in time when she was visiting family, they learned more about her family history, and I'll know a lot more after tonight. They were slaves, they're enslaved in North Carolina, and they went back and found the actual cabins that her ancestors were owned in and lived in. And so she's going to do a project with an 8x10 camera built with reclaimed wood from those cabins that Wayne is going to build her. It'll be the first camera. It'll be interesting to hear Wayne's side of it, but it'll be the first camera he's ever made for anybody other than himself, and the first camera he'll have ever made with an actual camera lens in it that isn't a non-pinhole camera.
Are you building the lens on that? Or
I'm building the lens.
Okay, cool.
So I've got I have some thoughts in my head around period correct lens designs, right?
Oh, okay.
Which fortunately I've been doing a lot of lately. Like, where is that beast? Oh, it's out in the other room. I think, yeah, it's in the other room. Like your standard single element early 1800s landscape lens with the aperture out front, the classic, things like that. So I have two 56 millimeter diameter. Yep.
Positive.
Yeah, exactly. I'm using Acromat because they're just more corrected.
Sure.
So I have not Wayne, but Fred was out of the 52 millimeters that I've used for a different build. But he had unlisted on his website a pair of 56 millimeter Acromats because I need to cover 8x10, right? I need with possibility of movements, with the maximum sharpness and funkiness level I can get.
Are you talking diameter or focal length?
Diameter. The focal length is 360.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
so he had two of those unlisted because I just emailed him and said, hey, do you have any more of these? I really would like some. And he said, no, I don't, but I have some of these. I'm like, what's their part number? He's like, they're not on the website. I have two of them. I'm like, they're mine. So with those, I'm hoping to make a convertible lens, thread on the rear element, turn it into a 180, and then take it off, and you've got your standard single element 360 with wooden barrel. So I'm going to bore out some red gum wood, which is a hardwood that's native to like North Carolina, Mississippi, the Delta, to try to use a hardwood that's kind of correct to her project and her location.
Cool.
And then I snagged one of Surplus Shed, man, Fred. Can we shout out Fred more? Like, seriously, he is a lifesaver for all of us. Like,
surplusshed.com. Here's an example of an uncemented achromat pair. So I got 4 of those.
Yeah, Fred is just a savior. So he has, I don't know if you've seen it, but he has some really nice medium format slide projector lenses for super cheap, right? And he has the recipe on there for what they're made of. They're a pair of 85 millimeter positives and a negative 57 in the middle, coming to a pretty nice, I think that's 123, 137 millimeter lens. With it's a 6.5, so it's got a really long barrel on the end, right, to make a nice sharp center for the slide projector. But a 42 millimeters should theoretically be a big enough diameter to throw an 8x10 image. So I have one of those coming for me, and then I did some math, and I have a pair of, he just happens to have a metric ton, I'm sure you saw, Graham, a metric ton of really nice 42 millimeter Acromats and DCXs and stuff in stock of really like a nice wide variety of focal lengths. So I've got a pair of those coming, as well that I should be able to insert into the mix to make somewhere between a 400 to 500 millimeter 8x10 lens triplet for her, if that works out and if that'll cover the 8x10 film.
Yeah, there's a.
It should.
This is a 93 millimeter focal length, 36 millimeter diameter.
Is that that's a 93? You said?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a couple of those. Those are really nice.
So now that I've got few cameras with shutters built into them, I've been starting to play a bit with barrel lenses, because you can find beautiful old lenses.
Oh,
peanuts.
Right.
things with 17 blade apertures and beautiful, beautiful coated lenses, but of the sort of simple older designs that I like. And I'm finding sources for those for 20, 30, 40 bucks, like not expensive at all. And some of the most interesting ones are Kodak projection lenses, which are actually enlarger lenses, but they called them projection lenses in those days. And there's some just spectacular, and a lot of them have big coverage. And they're small relatively as well. So there's a lot going for them.
Yeah, the lights medium format projector lenses are stunning. I have I think the 150 f2.8 that mounts up pretty well onto a 3 3.25 by 4.25 speed graphic.
Yep.
It's a little bit of vignetting around the corners, right? But that f2.8 wide open, you shoot it with like RC paper, and you're getting 1/50th, 1/100th of a second at f2.8, and there's just stunning lenses.
Yep.
They're really pretty, and there's an off-brand that Fred has a bunch of that are in reality, like Kelly Shane Fuller up in Portland City is a buddy of mine. I talk to him a lot. He's incredibly knowledgeable. That particular brand that Fred has is actually, it's Pentax made. They're Pentax made projector lenses. So it's not like some wonky off-brand throwaway. It's like, no, those are really nice lenses from Fred for peanuts. Oh, the other ones he has. Have you seen those 105 to 130
some of these. I'm like, what's their part number? He's like,
zoom portrait lenses he has? They're a little more expensive, but what they are is, I mean, I'm just going to say it, we're all old enough here to remember the middle school and high school yearly photos. Right? Where they'd assembly line you up and you just sit in line, then you'd shuffle over into the square and then take your photo and you'd shuffle off. So the largest company that ran those as a corporation had their own custom medium format camera system with bulk loaded 70 millimeter bulk canisters.
Camera Z.
Like the military. Was that them? It might be. I can't remember the name.
I bought
and they sent. Okay, yeah, and they had a really beautiful, essentially TLR, with a really gorgeous Pentax made zoom, medium format zoom. Fred's got them all. He bought all of their new old stock lenses. He has them in twin lens assembly, so if you want to make your own TLR, you can. You can flip it on its side and turn it into a freaking medium format stereo or large format stereo camera, or you can buy them individually.
What do they cover?
Well, for sure they cover 6x6, right, from the old thing.
Nice.
Let me grab a link. Yeah, 645 for sure.
I used to buy those, and there was another brand before Camera Z. Long roll 70 millimeter for school portraits or things like that. And I used to just tear the lenses off and sell those. I couldn't sell the bodies. I once sold a body to a guy in Russia for like 150 bucks. And it was like $190 to sell it. I said to him, I'm sorry, and then threw it in the trash and took the lens off.
Here, I'll throw this into the chat. Let's see. It's a Computar. That's the one that's Pentax made. Computar is Pentax Sashi. So he has them in individual, and he has them in a pair. Let me see if I can find the Computar. I haven't bought one yet because they're just a little bit past. Like, if I don't have a distinct use for them, I can't really afford to just like throw 50 bucks at something. But they're really nice.
It's kind of why I won't buy stuff from surplus shed, is because when they're out, and I don't want to have to just buy the entirety of a supply before selling the first one, when somebody copies that design and then buys the entirety of that supply.
Right.
Lens
And I
hunting
want to
is
say
hard.
he has some of these floating around here that may even have a shutter in it. I could be wrong.
That's appealing.
Yeah, I thought I hunted around somewhere, and it might not be on Fred's site. It might be somewhere else. A few other people have these lens setups. But yeah, if you just go to just do a search on Computar, it'll pull all three of the setups of the lenses, and they're dope. They're really dope. So yeah, so I have that stuff coming for Lana, and then I'm building or trying to build an ultra wide angle lens out of those Hawkeye doublets that Fred has for a Sony A7. So just they're 38 millimeter diameter, which is essentially a 1 1/8 inch wood cutting spade cut. Just an M42 lens cap and body cap, and that creates the barrel and the mount to go onto the helicoil. It's just a pair of them.
Yeah, that looks really appealing too.
It's just getting it to like the problem is math wise, and this is where like Jason Lane is just shaking his head in dismay and wanting to throw things at me over the internet. Is the back of the envelope math, which Graham brought up in your podcast. That Ethan was like, I take umbrage with the term back focal length, sir. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, like, all of those are thin lens approximations, which are good.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's total back of the envelope math, which is pretty much the only thing I live on. So back of the envelope math places this combination at like 14 millimeters from the sensor for a 17 millimeter focal length lens, which, considering the fact that an A7 has an 18 millimeter flange distance, is getting hella sketchy. So it's
one other consideration with like ultra short flange distances on digital cameras is like film pixels or film grain can see in any direction basically, whereas pixels on cameras, because of like the Bayer array and just the way they work, is like often they'll have a shallower angle of view, and so as you get closer to them, if the pixel lens only looks like this and you're coming in from over here, you start getting like real crazy vignetting. But I feel like back of the envelope calculation is totally fine on digital, because you can just look at it and then adjust things and see in a video if you're getting closer.
Right. My challenge is I don't have one of those cameras or anything with a Sony E mount, so I've got to.
There is another possible way to work around this. If you designed a lens to go on a focal reducer that fits the A7, then you could get it out where your sensor. It would also add a stop of light, so I finally broke down and bought a cheap Chinese focal reducer to try on Fuji cameras.
Okay.
So I'm starting to find out that I actually like a certain amount of image deterioration, and that this whole supposed image quality thing is far more subjective.
You're speaking my language, Nick.
to cut a long story short, I bought one that takes Nikkor lenses, and I really freaking like it. It means I can use I get a wider field of view and an extra stop of light. I'm shooting in the pitch dark in the woods right now, and this watery midwinter light, and having that extra stop of light is a big deal. And it does add a different quality to the image, but it's all positive. I don't see any downside to it. I'm really enjoying it.
Okay.
So that's another solution.
Right on.
Hey, Eric, what do you think about maybe coming on our show and doing a full episode of this type of talk? Because as you know, I love this whole homemade lens concept, and what we're able to do with this. And we can, I'm just afeared we're going to run too long for most people to listen to
Right.
with this, and I was going to say, you might run out of words, but I have a feeling you're not one of those people who runs out of words very often. Am I right with that?
I could deny this, but my fiance would be just like,
you're right. Exactly. So So let's talk about getting you on either on the next episode or one very soon. And thanks for
can I ask a question before we badger in public into coming on our show? Hey,
badger away.
When is this lens due for this camera that you're making for Wayne and Alana?
I was going to say it would be fun to do this a little further on when I have some traction on that BC. Okay. I'll know the due date today after 5 o'clock. I mean, no matter what, like this week, once the elements arrive from Fred, I'm going to start work for sure, just specking stuff out. And I did also order an optical bench because, if nothing else, it's just one of the little Arbor educational, Arbor science. Well, mostly not for the large format ones, for this little apartment, like just little right here. Like I can no longer just sort of scooch up against the wall and go, oh, that looks about like I can't.
Yeah,
and I don't want to drop
spring screws on every mirror and lens alignment.
And I don't want to drop a lens element onto a large format, like a full format sensor. That would suck. Nick?
So there's one thing I just was thinking. I don't know if they make focal reducers for your full frame camera that you're planning to put this lens on, but you can adapt the opposite, the thing that magnifies the image a bit. I forget what they're called, but those you can find in every junk store for peanuts.
Right.
So you would get one, stick it on the adapter that fit the A7. Right. Anyway, what it does is it gets you out away from the sensor, and it should spread the light out so that you don't have that issue of being too close.
Right.
If actually the magnifiers, some of those even come with a helicoid, so you get like a macro thing, which could be handy too.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I just wanted to say that, like, we have made the mistake on the podcast before when somebody we want to talk to is working on something that we really want to hear about, pushing them off as they kind of work on it. Like my buddy Joe, we didn't let him on the podcast for like 6 months now because I wanted him to finish this damn book so he could talk about it. And like, we really just should have had him on as soon as we could, and then had him on again to talk about the book. But
Yeah, I mean, I feel fairly certain I should have all the pieces in place to get to serious work on it within the next week and a half. The other thing I need to get out here, now that I have, so weird, a house with a real garage, is I can set up like dude, I can set up a woodworking shop basically.
But Eric, the shop is going to get your 3D printer so dusty.
Good thing I don't have a 3D printer.
There you go.
But I have a genuine like drill press coming, which will really let me like do a much better job at precision, especially precision drilling holes, like I'm going to need to do for Alana's lens barrels and whatnot.
The small tabletop bandsaw is another really often missed tool.
We have one of those already.
Also,
that's great.
Drill press is clearly just wasting space that could be used for a CNC mill.
And have you ever used a router table?
We actually have a router. We just got it, and we're going to get a table for it.
Perfect.
Shit over there.
I think we're getting dangerously close to Norm Abrams.
Out the trombone.
No,
well, just this.
This old house, Norm Abrams. He said, "Today we're building a shaker chair. We put it into the shaker chair machine, and it just does it." No,
that's your 3D printer, man. We're doing it the old way. The shakers had to pedal their routers, but it's not that different.
Dude, I was so tempted to get one of those. Mark Osterman was selling a pedal-powered router. No, a pedal-powered lathe. Mm-hmm. That he had in his garage. And if I wasn't on the opposite coast in California from him in Rochester, New York, it was a beautiful piece of machinery that he'd restored, and it's dope. Right? You put the wood in there and you hand pump it and you do your thing. And I was like, that is
what's
so
better
rad.
than a hand pump lathe? An
Tell
electric
us.
machinist's lathe. You don't
True.
jump
True.
up and down while trying to hold the tool straight.
Then there's an older version which uses a bow and a string that's wrapped around a spindle.
That's the one
that
I've used.
Yeah.
I had a friend who painstakingly carved a set of bowling pins on a bow lathe. I've made like 2 cuts and said, enough of this. I have electricity.
Yeah, I'm not that much of a
my mother
masochist.
just converted one of her sewing machines to a hand crank sewing machine, and she is so excited. I think that she's going to be disappointed if we don't lose power for weeks.
Now I have to throw in here that I have an old hand crank drill press, and I've discovered it's a self-feeding drill press, and I've discovered that it will drill with much finer bits than any electric tool. Because it's turning slower and it's built like a freaking brick, whatever. It's you can put these very fine little bits on it and they won't break.
I believe this.
Yeah. With that, shall we wind her up? And
we've been winding Ethan up this whole time talking about anything but a
all this 3D printer talk. Sure.
Well,
I mean, we could talk lasers.
Winding people up and
the laser cutters are pretty dope. I'm not going to deny it.
Okay. Let's do some shout outs. Ethan, do you have any?
I probably have a long list of people I owe shout outs.
You want to jot them down? We'll come to you last.
Yeah, okay.
Nick, anybody you want to shout out to?
Give me a sec. Why don't you do your shout first?
Okay. I want to say thank you to Matt Beckberger, who was one of the people I sold some camera equipment to. Thank you very much. Turned into a Chamonix. I guess that's the main one. I'm also really excited about a future project that he's told me about that I'm not going to tell you guys about because I don't have the right to tell you about his project. But I'm really excited about a project that's coming out of Raveni Labs up there in Kanakistan. Let's see. Eric, do you have any shout out?
Kanakistan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you betcha. Yeah, for sure. I'm from Wisconsin, my dad's a Youper, and so like when the drinks go, Wisconsin comes out.
Oh yeah, no, I know that because I'm from Minnesota.
Oh so, yeah, for sure.
Cold enough for you?
In California? No, it's awesome. So anyway, shout out to my mates Simon and Andrew in the Large Format Photography Podcast for introducing me to this wonderful, not incestuous, friendly community.
That's right. Community. Not incestuous.
Right. Do not break out into We Are Family. It would be embarrassing.
That's right.
For you three for doing the awesome stuff you do. My fiance for putting up with my shit. And definitely for just getting the opportunity to start to actually do a lot more of this type of thing. Like Andrew or Simon said to me yesterday, like it's been quite a journey to go from rolling lenses and dollar bills to being commissioned to make a handmade 8x10 lens for an artist of incredible talent. So that's like, you could never have poked me with anything and said, this is going to happen to you over the course of 2 years. I'd be like, you're smoking crack rock. Like, no, forget it. I want what you have because it's some great LSD.
So. I want to say when we had Nicole from
Montreal.
From Montreal. She mentioned you in this guy out in California who's rolling dollar bills or rolling lenses into dollar bills. And it's like I wrote down your name and it went nowhere. So I'm glad you resurfaced because I'm really excited about the work that you do. So, Ethan, do you have a list or do you have a
I started making a list, but basically I just wanted to thank Andrew Bartram for coming on my live stream. I have about 30, 40 days of assembly of all of the batches of mongooses to come and some wholesale orders, and I have a table full of camera parts, and so I haven't set a schedule, and we actually need to talk after this show when I turn us off about scheduling. But it's been really nice to just be able to do my work while opening this chat and talking to people about cameras, and people have been dropping in. I'm a very unpopular internet show, but it's been really fun. We'll do some more of it.
All right, Nick, do you have any shout outs?
Yeah, so there's a prolific restorer of beautiful old cameras who's been posting on our Facebook group page, named Rene Smets.
Dude, that guy's a once in a generation talent.
Yeah, he does.
I swear to God.
He's just doing beautiful work, and these are spectacular old cameras.
You guys should get him on.
Once he builds himself too.
For a year. Tell Renee to answer my phone calls. I haven't called him. I have called Wayne, but I have sent Renee lots of messages on different
I
platforms.
keep poking. Sorry, man.
No,
Sore
it's
spot.
okay.
Yeah, well, so his presentations in the Facebook group are really beautifully made as well, and some people, and I ought to be the same way, but some people want to craft their presentation and not just jabber on the phone and with a blurry video picture. So who knows? It's not everyone's cup of tea, this babbling on, but we'll keep trying.
I have one book that that I want to mention. It's from another podcast, 99% Invisible, which is the smartest general design and architecture and city planning podcast out there, and it's the 99% Invisible City. It's an absolutely fabulous book about all those things that we don't pay attention to, that make our environment run, which is tangentially related to what we do because it's design, and we do lots of design. At this point, we normally thank Robbie who composed the music that you guys have not been listening to in this episode, because we are slack and we have dropped the ball and we don't have the music ready. But visit Robbie Cribbs at soundtrapstudios.com. Do not confuse it with the online podcast sharing app or something, but it's soundtrapstudios.com. And just want to say thanks, Robbie.
Thanks, Robbie. And I do have one final word, spinning off of what you guys just said.
But the music is playing. Can't you hear?
That's all right. I just read that the world just passed a really horrendous milestone, which is that the accumulated mass of objects created by people, all that 99% invisible stuff, has just passed the accumulated mass of all biological organisms on the planet. So
that's very cool.
That's terrifying.
So
hey, for every
the planet so I can skate it.
You better go plant a bush or a tree or something.
Yeah.
Sprinkle some weed seeds around, do